Welcome to your Daily Game Face. I'm Dr. Kim Lannon here looking worn.
Okay. It's going to start right away.
Oh, yeah. And I'm here with Lou. I just got back from a little vacay.
Yep. Looked like you traveled last night.
Lou, that's not what you said.
I know.
That wasn't what you originally said.
Yep.
Well, I was saying I was feeling really tired because I got up. See, I'm good. I came home last night and I was so refreshed and like feeling like really good the whole time. And now I'm back and I feel like I got hit by a Mack truck because my cat decided to be up the entire night. So my sleep that was recovered is now back to, and so I'm feeling a little,
So I attempted to support and acknowledge that.
Yeah, well,
didn't do it well.
No, because your words were, you look worn.
Words were bad.
You said worn.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'd like that back.
Mm-hmm. And Lou and I are recovering from our first fight.
Wasn't our first fight.
It wasn't?
It wasn't really a fight either.
It was, here, let's see the words you choose. What words would you describe as our interaction that we had at midnight last week?
Yeah.
He's hesitant. He's like, oh shit.
I'm in trouble now.
He's like, I don't know what to say. I will describe it. Lou, you and I had what I would consider our first social media tete-a-tete.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah. It's supposed to be a discussion.
Yep.
And it was a discussion
That's all
for
I was
me.
calling for.
It was for me, and then next thing you know, you were attacking me. Okay, so
I didn't attack at all. That was not even close to an attack.
It so was, but that's okay. Because I am who I am, and I was able to sidebar you on the backside and be like, swords down. Let's put the swords down. We don't need to do this over something that doesn't need to be talked about like that. Oh my God, now I'm itching.
Triggered a frustration. So.
Yeah, and then I became your target. I love becoming people's targets. Just because I have things to say back doesn't mean I'm your target.
Okay, let's not.
See,
not to go around this again.
Well, nobody that knows what we're talking about, but if you follow us on Facebook, people would have been like, what the hell is going on?
But if you realize it wasn't about the issue.
Well, it was. Well, it wasn't actually about the issue. It was about you got butthurt about something I said back to you. And that's really what it was about. You got butthurt and you took it in a way that didn't need to be taken that way. So then I had to come around the backside, no pun intended, which is weird, and smooth it over with, this is what it means. This is what I'm saying.
It over.
Oh, for me, I do, because you are very sensitive and I am very sensitive.
Okay.
And so therefore we had to be able to be, calm. We don't need to be, there was no reason to be having a thing over the thing you were putting out there. It's so stupid.
See?
Yeah.
You're doing it again.
It was dumb to have this. No, why? I'm doing it again?
Yep.
Okay. It was dumb to get into a fight over that. And there's silence across the bow. If everyone really wants to know, my professional opinion, after much research,
that wasn't the issue.
The fact let me finish.
Okay. Yep.
After much discussion over last week, prior to talking to Lou about this in my field with people in my field, is autism is not caused from Tylenol. And there was a sense of fear mongering out there that was going towards women, and women then feeling guilty for having taken Tylenol. And I was fielding this all week. And then Lou made a discussion post and I responded, and then we have butthurtness. And that's what happened. And that is what happened.
But again, it wasn't about the issue.
No, well,
it's about the characterization of fear mongering. It was a worthwhile discussion.
It was. And you and I had a discussion about it. And so therefore we're moving on.
But this is where we are, and this is what makes it so frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
You can't have a discussion that maybe it's not right to shoot somebody because of what they think.
Exactly.
You can't have that discussion because it gets elevated into something else stupid.
Right. And to my point.
Yeah.
Okay. So now we're all on the same page.
Mm-hmm.
Are we on the page? I don't know. Are we still on it? Okay, good. I'm going to get autism is too caused by Tylenol. And I'm going to say, okay, well, the Swedish guy who did the Swedish study and all the other studies that were out there and are out there are inconclusive and not statistically significant enough to say that, in fact, that is true, because also we know that they are, in fact, not factually backing enough to be able to say that. And also, genetics show that autism has been around forever, pre-Tylenol. So, and then somebody made a comment to me on a different post that, well, lung cancer has been around far longer, as their point, to make that point, than smoking. And I said, well, no, smoking's actually been around since BC. You know, people have been smoking things forever. So yes, it's been around forever. And your point, not yours, but their point was not relevant. So anyway, back to trauma bonding. Let's bond over trauma.
So the takeaway here
is stay off social media.
Well, A.
There's the first one.
B, don't ask for discussion because we're incapable of it as a society. C, let's not pay attention to Harvard and Johns Hopkins. And
well, no, we have to. No, you can pay attention to them. That's why no, that is not true. First of all, you and I can have a discussion anytime. Second of all, you absolutely pay attention to them. But when you put them all together and they still come up inconclusive around, you have to have a cause effect correlational anything to draw a conclusion. You, in science, and what I've learned and how I ended up getting my doctorate, you must have statistical significance, and it's not there. So those are all relevant studies, but they are not statistically significant to draw that one A to B to C. It just isn't there. Just saying. They're just not there. When it has statistical significance, then we have that conversation about that statistically. But to say Tylenol can cause it, you can't even say that yet, because that doesn't have the significant factor. It has possible connections drawn, maybe.
Yeah, that's what the study said.
That's right. But people people are jumping on it and going, because people don't know how to read those, and people are immediately going to, oh, it's cause effect. No, because but you see, you're able to read that, and other people aren't able to read that, because people don't all read that the same way. They think it means that Tylenol causes it, therefore, and that's what it's saying. That's not what it was saying. It's not what it was saying, but people jump and then run and have these things, and it's like, no, that's not what it's saying. And I know people that are very intelligent people who read those studies, who should know better that last week, and I'm not talking about you, that I'm not, that actually have a background in science and know that stats are important and what it means and the difference between correlation, causation, and so on and so forth. And still we're going, nope, means that means autism. No, that does not mean that. That was what I was saying. So the fear-mongering comment and the guilting of women was coming along because people do not read into what cause and effect and causation versus correlation are, and the possible link for may cause versus it does cause wording causes people to have fear and then feel guilty over possibly doing something to harm their babies. I wish more people would be worried, because I work in addiction. I wish more people would be worried about taking their methadone on a daily basis and shooting up heroin while they're pregnant, because that actually causes a problem. I mean, that there's actual statistical significant studies and actually anecdotal evidence that's beyond statistically significant. Say that 500 more times. Don't do drugs during, pregnancy. Don't, whatever. So anyway, we're going to go back to trauma bonding.
Part two.
And here we are. And I'm sure there's no comments yet. So I'm sure that will generate God knows what. And I wasn't even coming on here to talk about that today, but it ended up coming up because you and I had a little moment last week.
Yeah. But it wasn't about that topic.
No, it was about saying fear-mongering and guilting of women. Was it not?
Yes.
Right. But that was part of my response back, and that's the part you didn't like. Correct?
Yes, because it inhibits having a discussion about the actual topic.
No, because we just did. Well, I had the conversation. Did you want to have a conversation about it?
No, I'm just,
Are you sure?
yes.
We can. This is prime example of how to have good relational skills. Right? I think I clarified my point though. To you. Did I?
The point on the topic, yes.
Okay. Well, what's the other point that you want to
The
have?
other point, no. The whole basis of my post
Yes.
was that we were incapable of having a discussion about it.
Okay.
And while you had some sort of, as soon as the labeling comes in, as soon as fear-mongering, racist, Nazis, fascists.
Oh, I didn't say any of that. Wait, let's be clear. I did not say any of that.
I understand, but it's
Okay.
the same technique.
But it is fear-mongering when people don't know what they're reading and then they just believe it for plain sight. And then you're like, oh, God. You know? Lou and I are going to circle. Okay. So
Yep.
moving along, right? We're talking about trauma bonding. Do you remember what I said it was last week?
You said several things.
Well, okay. What is your takeaway from last week so I can pull the rest of it together?
First of all, I learned that trauma bonding isn't necessarily mutual.
Correct.
Yeah. It's usually one way, and there's an abuser and there's a non-abuser.
Well, which makes the trauma bond.
Yeah.
So, right. So there's actually both people are part of it, but it doesn't mean that both people are
right
doing it. I mean, they are, but they're not, if that makes sense. They're
sounded a lot like Nazism, actually.
Were you just saying Nazism? Wow.
Nazism.
Wow. Yeah. Nope. Well, there's a lot of, I mean, trauma bonders, the ones that are the chaotic attachers, tend to have a narcissistic streak to them. You know, they just do, at least in my experience.
Yep.
So that tends to be there.
They cultivate supply similarly. And
yes, yep. Exactly. So if you're asking yourself, like, if you're in love, am I in love, or am I in a trauma bond? Because people do that so often, they ask themselves that never. It's important to, take a close look at how your relationship makes you view yourself, and also if your boundaries are respected and if you feel trapped. So a trauma bond is not a healthy relationship, and it is not real love. It will look like that in the beginning because of that love bombing thing.
Right.
But in a healthy relationship, a person should feel safe and confident. They should have that feeling of openness and ability to feel things without fear and anxiety. And with a trauma bonded relationship, usually there's a person feels really negative about themselves. They usually feel negative about their feelings about the relationship. They usually have lots of fear and anxiety. They do feel stuck and trapped, even though they might relationally know that realistically they're not trapped, but they feel relationally trapped, if that makes sense. So what do healthy relationships involve? They have respect, safety and security, soothing, trust, support, accountability, willingness to grow and work together with the other person. But a trauma bond is not built on that. A trauma bond is built on like an overall sense of control. The chaotic attached person often makes their target, like the vulnerable person, feel that they love them with those grand overarching, gestures of affection and then attention. But then what do? Then they take the affection away and bond them into the relationship for the person to keep looking for that. So I said last week I would talk about a little bit about what happens to your brain in a trauma bond. So it's like PTSD. Trauma bonds affect the brain by altering the important neurochemical levels of dopamine and oxytocin. So the feel-good things that make you, when you're love bombed, your dopamine goes up. When you're love bombed and you're in that really wonderful state that you hope to maintain somewhat of in a good, healthy relationship, the oxytocin in your brain, that feels good, that gets regenerated when someone keeps consistently doing good things and loving things, keeps transmitting. So the neurotransmitters, the chemicals, are regulated and keep staying regulated. When you're in a trauma bond, those get dysregulated and can cause emotional addiction. So you become relationally addicted. Now, the chaotic attached person becomes incredibly attached, and although they're dysregulated, they are the dysregulator. So they will make the other person have cravings for what they are missing. So the unassuming person that becomes the assumed bonded, right? They will crave certain feelings that come from the original way of bonding in. So the brain is constantly in conflict, waiting for something good to come, waiting for, okay, I'm confused now, but eventually I'm going to get love. Eventually I'm going to get this back. And so, the person will justify to themselves that I'm okay and it will be okay because I'll get this back. The trauma bond can also lead to problems besides PTSD. It can lead to like chronic physical illnesses. It can lead to weight gain. It can lead, not for the chaotic attached person, but for the person who is in the bond.
Right.
It can lead to dissociation, anxiety, sleep problems, brain fog. It can lead to cognitive decline. It can lead to emotional withdrawal. It can lead to flashbacks, feelings of hypervigilance, even, all those kind of things that go with PTSD that people don't think about in relationships, but because it's a relational construct and a relational bond, people have that addiction to, I want what I used to have and I know it was there, so I know it will come back. So it's that intermittent gambling payoff that I always say.
Yep.
Right. So I think I mentioned it last week, the Stockholm syndrome people.
Yeah,
right?
A little bit. Yep.
Right. So one of the trauma bond examples that I use is Stockholm syndrome. So if you remember, I always remember the Patty Hearst thing, how people said that if people don't remember, because that dates me, right? Patty Hearst is famous heiress, daughter to the Hearst family fortune. And she was kidnapped, and then she became a sympathizer to her abusers, and that's what it is. It's when the person develops basically a feeling for their captor, for their abuser, for their taker, whatever. So that's exactly a very common bond relational example of what it is to be in a relationship that are like that, and it's kind of scary because it can get really bad. So people often will say, well, the person's not physically abusive. Well, emotional abuse, you can't see it as much. So the physical abuse, obviously you can see, but the emotional abuse is much more bonding in a way. And it offers that person a way to get them to tie in, it's the ties that bind, right? And so the brain is always waiting for the dopamine rush to come in and the oxytocin to dump. So that will be there for forever. So people then will say, well, how do you break the trauma bond?
People are much more willing to do the emotional trade-off than they are the physical trade-off.
Well, yes.
Which is why it can be more insidious.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a good point, because society doesn't put as much value either. We'll talk about it like it is, but society doesn't put as much value. Even like if you go to court, like you have a kid or a person in a relationship that's being abused and it's emotional abuse, even judges and stuff will say, well, you can't see it. You can't, they know it, but it's not as visible. So then they just let it go. But it's worse than
it's
physical.
Not as tangible. So it's difficult in the courtroom type of situation.
Right. So,
but that ends up justifying it to a degree.
Right. Exactly. And it does. Right. So I was just looking at my notes. So how do you break the cycle? Well, so some of the steps to break the bonds are, I said last week, acknowledging and not defending or justifying that it's not happening. So if you feel like you are in a regular, normal relationship, there goes my voice. If you feel like you're in a regular, normal relationship and you think that what's going on is normal because maybe you're raised that way or because it's something that you're just so familiar with, you've been in it so long, it's going to be really hard for you to see and accept that.
Therefore, you won't act.
Therefore you won't act. So if you don't have the knowledge and the acceptance or the understanding that you actually are in something like that, that makes a big difference. If you don't know what I'm talking about, and this is your first show to this experience, you'll have to go back to last week's show in the last part of September to listen to what a trauma bond is in a relationship. But acceptance is the first thing, acknowledging that you are in a relationship that is a bond into trauma, and that you're with someone who either is, we very rarely will talk from the side of the chaotic attached. We'll talk from the side that, you know, the person who is
Right.
in it, because the chaotic attached person usually doesn't come to therapy. They don't see themselves as a problem. If they do, they say they're not going to change. So those should be cues right there that you're probably in a relationship with. If someone's refusing to go get help or see someone with you because they won't value that that's something that's necessary for the relationship to even get better.
And
right?
generally speaking, they'll turn it around on you, right?
Well, eventually, yeah. Well, yes, they'll do the darboing. They'll deny. They'll attack you.
Yep.
They'll reverse the victim around to themselves, and then you become the offender. So it's, you know, DARVO, deny, attack, reverse, victim, offender, and that's the gaslighting aspect, which is that's the glue that sticks it together in the actual bond. You know, so. What was I going to just say? Oh, so the acknowledgement, obviously. So acknowledging the present and acknowledging what's happening. The hopeaholic piece, right? Instead of hoping that a person will change or looking at them in the way that they were when you first met, acknowledge that what's currently happening and reflect on it as the reality of the situation, as opposed to hopeaholicing. People will automatically like jump over like, okay, yeah, that is right now. But what was that? That was, you know, 20 years ago it was like that, but 20 years later it's like this, and it's been like that for how long? And so being able to really strip away the hopeaholicness of the whole factor is such an important piece here, is letting go of the hope that something's going to change. And that's really hard, you know, letting go of the hope that someone's ever going to meet the needs that you have. And are you happy with, if that doesn't happen, can you do that? You know, look at the evidence, which is the next phase of that. Look at the evidence in front of you. Is the evidence saying that, okay, for the first 2 or 3 years, the person was able to step in and be that amazing person. And now, you know, 15 years later, you haven't really seen a lot of highlight reels of this, you know, and if you do, are they highlight reels that are so short and sporadic that, you know, the evidence shows you that clearly that's there. So you got to look at, so you're acknowledging the present, you're looking at the hopeaholic and saying, no more hopeaholic, got to be really present with this. And then look at the evidence that's supporting where you're at. A chaotic attached person will most commonly make promises that they'll love you or that they will change. I promise I will change. I promise I'll be better. I'll promise you that today is going to be better than yesterday. But you really need, as the chaotic attached person, you've got to focus on their actions that do not back up their words. If their words are saying the thing that the behavior is not showing, you need to know that. You need to be able to identify that's happening. And if it's yes, that is what happens, you know, people will then, if you're justifying, then minimizing it and whatever, you know that you're going to have a harder time breaking the cycle because it's harder to step away. So also looking at the fact of how to break it is understanding that the bond that you have with the person negatively will impact your self-esteem and break down your confidence. And so are you now seeking therapy to build your confidence back up? Are you needing to take care of yourself in a different way? Are you having to take more time to disentangle?
Are you accepting the blame?
Detangle. Yeah. Are you taking on the blame and the responsibility? Yes, to take on that. If you are, then are you going to take some steps to break your piece of it in the trauma bond? Because although you might not be the chaotic attached, you become part of the chaotic attachment, and therefore that's your responsibility and accountability piece to break your bond with that person, to get out of that.
You hit on it with the hopeaholic piece. That's your part in the relationship.
Right.
Because most people in these bonds are hopeaholics.
Right. And so if you are the hopeaholic, you have to let go of the hope that person's going to change, despite the fact that they say, I love you and I'm going to change and you'll see and it will get better. And then when nothing happens and then the repeated behavior happens and then they get mad at you for their bad behavior, for your reaction to it, that's where you have to be able to say, I have to look at the evidence here and say, I have to build my confidence and build my self-esteem to go take care of myself, because I'm waiting for that other person to take care of me. And they're just not going to.
And I have to stop writing this off as
right.
It's just a bad time. Things will get better.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And when you look at the whole picture like that and you're looking at a real trauma bond, the breaking the bond can feel overwhelming and extremely difficult because it becomes so insidious and it has gone on probably for so long. It's important that people recognize that it is possible to break the bond, and it needs to happen, especially if it needs to happen for anybody, but it really needs to happen if you're feeling, your health is taking a hit, your happiness level, your emotional safety, that you feel anxious all the time. If you're going home and from work and you're feeling anxious going home and you feel more at ease at work, that should tell you something. Or if you feel like you go and do something with people and then you come back to the same house where that other person lives and you're feeling like, oh, so anxious, that's a sign that you're trauma bonded. So if you're trying to break the trauma bond, obviously getting professional help, life coaches. There's some really good life coaches out there that work specifically with trauma bonding. There's so many more people out there that have worked with attachment issued people, because if you are with a chaotic attachment, you're more likely that you have got your own attachment. No one's got a perfect attachment. We'd love to all say we have secure attachments and everything's wonderful, but we tend to all of us have some little insecurity in our attachments. It's just how extreme are they?
Right.
And that's what a chaotic attachment will bond to.
And what your partner does with it.
Right. And they'll bond to that and they'll pull for that, and so if you try to do it on your own, which people, you can read self-help books on it, you can do all kinds of interesting, there's like workshops that you can go to. They all, not all, a lot of them are really good, especially if you've got a lot of support and programs that do it. But a lot of times what I see with people is they'll go through the withdrawal symptoms of the trauma bond and then they'll slip right back into it.
Yeah.
Right. So emotional strain, feelings of when you're trying to get out of it. I'm going to drink something. Hold on. When you're having intense feelings of sadness, loneliness, or emptiness. Now, a lot of times people will report to me that they're empty, sad, and lonely, even with the person present.
Yeah.
But it's about when you're trying to break the cycle, that will intensify the loneliness, the emptiness, and the sadness, even in the presence of the person that's already there. It will be there. But then when you're breaking away from it and you're actually doing the work, you'll feel that even more.
Yeah.
And so it's often accompanied by a longing to return to the person, because it feels better to be in what it was with those three things: the loneliness, the sadness, and the emptiness. But it feels better for people because it's like,
at least you have the hope of the better.
Right. But the problem is the hope is
Right.
that that is there. And then knowing that relationship in that way is harmful. So going through the feelings of all that are way more important, and having the withdrawal symptoms are more important so you can get through them, because it's like a drug. You have to get past the withdrawal to get past that, so that that, okay, it's better than if heroin makes you feel good and you go away from it and you miss it because you're scared of what it's going to look like on the other side, that going back to it's going to end poorly. So you got to stay away from it, and you just got to get to the other side.
Drugs are often like that, where your relationship with the drug deteriorates over time, but you keep attached to the initial relationship with the drug. Right.
I'm going to cough again. Must be that post-airplane funk. So then the next piece, not next, but other pieces of this are, getting out of this, is that you're going to experience anxiety and fear, right? So you could have persistent worry. You could have a panic attacks about being alone, the future, the possibility of never finding a relationship again. I mean, I see this in teenagers all the time. They're like, no one's ever going to love me again. No one's ever out there. It's like, you would hope that in, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, I see it less in older people, but the fear of being alone, or the fear of like what it's going to be like, which is often wrapped around in adults around money. Like, if they're married, like what can I survive without this person, brings up the anxiety and fear of being there. Right. Going through the guilt and the self-doubt, like questioning, if you're leaving the relationship is the right decision. If you're not leaving it, but you're putting good boundaries down so that you can function, build your confidence, all those, feeling like responsible for creating maybe something stressful in that other person. You're not responsible for that. If they get distressed and because you're, detangling from their chaos, it's normal to feel guilty. It's normal to have self-doubt, but you have to just slowly keep going on in your mind going, I can live without this in my life. I don't have to worry about this. Even though I'm worried, I don't have to worry. I don't have to live in this. The sense of depression that can come over people, if you're prone to depression, the likelihood is that you're going to have those withdrawal symptoms. So that despair, sometimes that hopelessness, lack of motivation, people lay around in bed or whatever. And I'm always about get out there and daily function, get out there and make sure you find friends, you find, some activities, go for hikes, go for walks, go to the gym, go out for dinner, make sure that you're doing things with other people.
Stay in the moment.
Right, because it goes back to that thing of like identify, stay present, and not stay present in the moment of whatever it is, like when you're home with the person.
Because if your predominant thought is I'm never going to find another relationship, it's hard to function that way.
Exactly. And then, yes.
Just stay in. I have to get lunch.
Right. Yes, exactly.
Easier.
Right. Acknowledging, obviously, your physical symptoms. If you're having sleep disturbances, not your cat. Right? Changes in your appetite. Are you eating less? Some people are real restrictors and then they get worse. Some people eat more because they eat out of self-soothing because that's what soothes them. In lieu of having the chaos person there to hopefully give you what you need, you'll go to the food or you'll restrict back from it. Some people get nauseous, get so upset that they're separating away from the person that it makes them feel nauseous. It could give them headaches, migraines. The body will definitely respond. The body keeps the score, right? So stress will create the separation anxiety feeling, and then that physical can come over you. And you will have cravings for contact. This is what keeps people looped in. People feel, especially at the beginning, like some people will do it very quickly and it will go past, but the cravings for the contact is like, oh God, I'd rather have the contact than nothing.
Right.
It's that strong urge to reach out to the chaos creator. It's the strong urge to alleviate for yourself the feeling of pain that you're in and the withdrawal of like, okay, maybe if I spend half a day away from talking to them, that will make it better.
Yep.
No, you need longer time. It doesn't mean that you have to stop talking completely, especially if you live together, right? But it's more about like, what is the content and the quality of the time that you have talking together? Is it, are you back in the fight? Are you, because chaos attachers love fighting, as I said last week. Yep. They love to pick a spot, and it can be, when it's really intense and really insidious, they look for every word, every conversation, every single thing to be a fight, instead of being in that with them. Just do the, okay, go with the flow. Like,
yep,
if you say so, and do your life.
Yep.
Right. And then going back to the physical withdrawal symptoms is just being mindful of those, the anxiety feelings that come up, so that you don't end up having massive panic attacks, or you go into some kind of flashback mode of like living in it over and over and over again. So once you kind of go through some of that, then it's like a detox, right? If we think of it like real addiction, like with a chemical, you go through you're ridding your body of like the toxicity of the stuff around you and getting rid of it. So again, focusing on the present, creating your space, peace bubble, boundaries, not boundaries on the other person, just boundaries for yourself of what you won't allow to be crossed. Like, setting a good limit for yourself of like what you'll allow in your life on a daily. Practicing self-care. Now that can be, cooking for yourself, making sure you're doing friends stuff, going out, making sure you're getting outside, making sure that you're keeping connected with other people that know about what's going on, so that you're not feeling alone. And that's a really big piece, is so that you don't feel alone, because a lot of times people feel guilty for burdening other people when people, people won't be burdened. They'll just help support you. They'll know, they'll feel, I do have a client that has a trauma bonding thing going on right now. And one of her friends that knows the chaotic person will often say, but he's such a really good guy. And he's so funny, try to make it work, kind of the old school thing. And I'm like, no, we're not doing that.
No,
that's not helpful. And so they, instead of going to that person, they feel like they don't have a support person because that person is pushing them back towards the connection and the bond, and they're like, no, this is really bad. Be kind to yourself, not feeling guilty that you're doing something wrong or bad because you're you're withdrawing from that person. And the person that you're chaotically attached to oftentimes will get upset that you're withdrawing from them, and you're not giving them the attention. And that's actually an okay thing, even though it looks like, oh God, this is going to create madness. It might escalate them to be more mad, but eventually it gives them a sense of like, they've got to figure out how to be filling up their own cup without you filling it for them.
Right.
And that you're just basically a person that's emotionally withdrawing from them because you're not going to be part of their bottling them up with their feelings that they need, that they're getting from you. And so in healing, educate. The more you can find out about chaotic attachments and what your own attachment is, if you're not the chaos person. So if you're listening and you're actually identifying yourself as the chaotic attached, then obviously educate yourself. If you're the one that is in the other side of it and has been pulled in and you're a supplier, educate yourself. Understand what a trauma bond is. Listen to other podcasts on this. Read things. Know your signs of abusive emotional relationships. Know what gaslighting is, and don't poo-poo it as like, oh, it's just one of those terms that everybody uses. It means something, because having the knowledge can empower you because it identifies you in. When I have people read Codependent No More, the book for people in addiction of relationships, right? And addiction, that's actually how many of us in psychology, many of us believe that the addiction cycle of chemical and substance abuse comes from relational addiction.
Yeah.
And the problem at the beginning is relational, disconnect. It's the attachment issues. So when people read and educate themselves with Codependent No More, I always put that warning out that you're going to laugh, you're going to cry, you're going to identify, you're going to be angry, I always say you're going to want to throw the book out the window of the car. And I have one client that tells me that, only once this week, sometimes twice, it goes out the window of the car, right? Because all of a sudden the educating of yourself, you establish like an understanding, like, oh my God, I'm not alone. This is not just me that happens to be in these things. This isn't me that happens to just happen to. It's so many. I mean, there's a reason why the book is out there, right?
It's also important to break the narrative that it's all your fault.
Right. Exactly. Yes, exactly. Because the chaotic attached person
is painting that
narrative to you. Even if they're not verbally doing it, they're doing it in another way, and they're also doing it out in the world because that's what they do without even realize. I'll give them I'll checkbox that, like, without even realizing it. So the next piece would be taking care of establishing your boundaries. So set and enforce clear boundaries with the chaotic person. Decide what behaviors you will no longer tolerate and don't tolerate them, and stick to your decision, which is hard. It's like disciplining a kid, saying like, if you do that one more time, I'm taking that away, and then you don't. And then what does that do? It reinforces. So that's your part in it. If you're reinforcing it by not following through, then they know that you're never leaving. They know that you're never
right.
You're not serious. That it might be serious, but not really if you don't follow through. Limiting contact doesn't mean going completely ghosting and whatever. It's about minimizing or cutting off the toxic contact. So when the toxicity, the fight, the rev up comes, it's about shutting it down, just moving out of the space, or not going to the same places with them. If they say, hey, do you want to do this activity, tomorrow? Do you want to go to, no, not right now, for now, right? Yep. Because if your goal is to try to hold it together, okay, well, do it for now. But, also just overall limit back your contact. Just be like, okay, no, don't, some people have to block them. Some people have to, if you live with a person, it makes it a little harder. But, in general, you can limit back your contact. I already said build a support network, right, of people that are in your friend group, family, for emotional support, and then obviously life coaches, therapists, doctors. I don't typically recommend, as you know, like go get medication for this because I don't think that's necessary. If you're feeling really, really down and depressed and anxious, obviously yes, but there's obviously natural things out there. So find yourself a naturopath if you need to, but exercise and just being out in the world and nature and giving yourself a break can also alleviate a lot of those things and managing that.
Exercise, sleep, eating.
Absolutely. Keeping a journal, helping yourself by recording your improvement over wins, small wins of like, I didn't engage this, I didn't promote this, I didn't get into a fight, I didn't escalate today, I didn't get myself all worked up over something that I had no control over. Writing is a great way of seeing patterns that you're involved in to help you reinforce that you did a good job and seeing that you're making progress doing that. Challenging your negative narratives about what that person may have purported about you, that you're the it's your fault, it's your problem, really using some cognitive behavioral strategies of confronting any negative beliefs you believe about yourself, that somehow you're at fault, you've done this, etc. Replace them with something that's self-compassionate of like, I'm doing the best I can. Maybe yesterday I engaged 5 times and today I only engaged twice. And last week I was doing it 500 times, right? So making sure you're keeping track of that. Developing an emotional safety plan, creating a plan so that in case, something goes wrong in your relationship and you're living with the person, making sure you're saving money, finding a safe place for, things, I have clients that are in emotionally abusive relationships that get trauma bonded in, and they have all these things that are of value to them. And, the trauma bonded person gets angry, making sure that you have safety and what, where you want your things and where they are in terms of, so that nothing happens to them, because that person can get really mad. And then obviously if you're in an emergency and it gets really bad and you have to find a place to go, then you make sure you have a safety plan for people you can go to, right? And don't worry about worrying that people are going to be upset that you are in a relationship that isn't good, right? Because people often will say, people don't know that it's bad. Yes, they do. Yeah. People watch on the outside. They just don't say anything. It's always those relationships afterwards that people say, oh, I always knew that he or she was blah, blah, blah. He or she was like that, but I didn't want to upset you because you were happy you were in the relationship. No, everyone's
often
seeing
it's more clear to them than it is to you.
And and that's the thing is that, I have several people that I work with that will say like, an actual chaotic attached person that says, oh, she always says these things about me and makes me look so bad. And I say, actually, no, I think you do it all on your own and you're really good at exposing yourself, and you just don't realize it because you're so involved. And she actually doesn't have to say anything because it's just so obvious. There's that. Staying busy, obviously engaging in hobbies, work things, doing things that keep your mind occupied, takes your mind off of the withdrawal symptoms that can come. And then, just taking good care of yourself in lieu of another person. If you're looking to another person, people should compliment you, not make compliment. Well, of course they should compliment you, say you look great, but people should be complimentary partners, not fulfilling you. So the chaotic right. attached person is looking for you to fill them and make them feel okay about themselves, and they drain you. So that's why I call them soul suckers. They soul suck you, and then you can't take care of yourself. So you've got to be able to bring yourself up to that level of self-care so that you can get through all of that. And then people will say, can therapy help a trauma bond? Therapy can be extremely helpful for people who are in trauma bonds. It can help them to bring their lives together. If the person who has the chaotic attachment, if they want to work on it, it's hard to get people who are chaotic attachers to work on it for themselves because they usually don't see.
Right.
And they don't, or if they do see it, they don't want to see it. And they'll say, I'm not changing, because that's too scary. It's too vulnerable for them. But if they do, well, it's great because you can restructure their narrative. You can help them work through their past, but it's usually not as successful for that. Now, does a trauma bond go away? Yes, trauma bonds can go away for the non-chaotic person. The chaotic person, it's a more rare case because that's a person that has to really work harder at it. And again, goes back to, do they really want to? But if you're in a relationship with someone and you are not the chaotic person, you're going to go through all the withdrawal and all those things, and it's going to be hard. And it can take 6 months, a year, it can take 2 years, because it's a loss. If you're staying in the relationship and you're working on it, I mean, lots of people do. It is a choice, and it's also hard because you have to make other choices around that. A person can break free of that, even though they are still in a relationship with that person. They can break free of that, and move on in other ways. But if they're married, which a lot of my clients are, obviously, if they're married and they don't want to leave because of kids, or they don't want to leave because of finances or things like that, people do stay, and just they do things out of the convenience of making sure they stay in like a nesting situation, but then they just live separately in a lot of ways, and then just communicate on a very basic surface level. The best type of treatment, if people go into treatment and want to know, is obviously cognitive behavioral therapy and dialectical behavioral therapy, and doing any kind of like trauma work, especially for the person who's not the chaotic. The chaotic has so much more work to be done in terms of attachment issues, in a different way than the other person. So there is no set time for this. It's really random, and sometimes I think it's resiliency of certain people, but it's just how likely they are to release themselves and free themselves from the actual bond. So when a person feels the need to release their trauma, they will be able to be freer faster. And, sometimes that's a good cry session. Sometimes that's like a good run. When a person cries, it's often a sign of the trauma releasing, which is good, especially if people are not typically emoters like that. So I'm always a person that says, cry it out. Some people don't like to do that because it's stored up and then it makes them feel vulnerable. But
crying is a level of acceptance, isn't it?
Yes, and it's cathartic for people.
Yeah, rather than trying to fix it, you're just accepting
exactly
the tragedy of it.
Yes, and also, and when you do that, it's a way of relaxing and let the body breathe, because it's usually when there's a need to cry and it comes out, like people can just stand there and just all of a sudden tear up and it comes down their face, and that's because the body is storing it up like a a kettle on a hot stove.
That's why therapy is so important. It's an open space, a free, safe space to put your emotions into words, which is processing, which helps you. Just good to have. It's good release just to have that safe space in a period.
Right, and I if I could say anything to people that are feeling like they are listening and they like, oh, I don't want to go to therapy because it's very vulnerable. Yeah, because you should, if you don't feel confident doing that, go to a life coach, go to someone else where you can't, because people aren't going to judge you for it. And and that's the fear, is that someone's going to judge me for staying in this. Someone's going to judge me for being in it. And it's like, no, that is not what's going to happen. I mean, I can't say that doesn't happen, because I know of cases where people have gone to therapists or to friends and have been judged for, you can't judge that book, because everybody's got their reasons. You can't, if someone's been in a relationship for 1 year or 25 and they've, everyone's going to take their way of getting out of it in the way they take their time.
I see vulnerable in that way, but it's exactly not vulnerable. It's a very safe space.
Well, that's the thing. And so, and if you have a therapist, or if you have someone that you're seeing, or even a friend that tells you something different or says something that makes you feel worse for stating that you feel bad or you're hurting, that's probably not the person you want to be talking to. Just find, there's going to be another person out there. So finding another person, because I have one client,
someone who tells you, try to make it work.
Right. Yeah.
It's on you.
Right. And that's the old, that's
you're getting
old
plenty
school.
Of that. Find
another person. Yeah. Right. And then I was going to say, I have a person that reads, I swear she's read hundreds of books on this. And I'm like, okay. And now and then finally she came in. And so whenever we talk therapy, she's like, I already know that. So it's a little bit of a challenge, because it's always like, I already know that, but the problem is
you're not putting it into practice.
That's usually the problem, is like, I know the concept, it's now you've got to actually do it. And so, and if you've, walk the walk in terms of like family disentanglement, right? When you can have trauma bonds huge to family, right? And then being able to walk that back and implement that I have to do a stay away from them. I have to really lose my contact with them and things like that. Or I have to limit how much activity I give my mind to this person. Well, it looks different for everybody. So it's a process.
And part of the problem is media, movies, television has given us this view of therapy. That's an epiphany type of moment.
Right. And it's not, and there are,
like, I know this and all of a sudden it fixed. I know it happens.
Right.
But it's mostly about work.
It's a constant journey. That's why when people say, oh, how many sessions is it going to take? I giggle because I'm like, I have clients that have been with me for years because they are working through stuff that has been with them for years, and we're always working. And they'll say, do you think I'm better? I'm like, yes. And they're like, and then because I re-goal people, I'm always like, what are we working on now? What are we going to work on? What are we going to work on? Because I'm always trying to make sure and assess, do we have a necessity to keep working? Because, ethically, it's not reasonable to keep going if it's not reasonable, right? But truly, what I see is contemporary psychology now, which is the wellness model. There's always a need because people always need to talk. You don't want to go home and talk to you're not going to go home and talk to your chaos person.
Yep.
You're going to have to go somewhere else. So if you're living in that or you live in other things, you're always in the journey. So
I also think it's useful even if you don't have a specific
right
core that you're dealing with.
Oh, yeah, because people come in and say, well, nothing's bad today, so I really don't have anything for you. I'm like, it's not about always the bad. It's not always talking about something terrible or tragic or acute or the bleed out. It's just talking about sometimes like, hey, this was a good thing. These are good things. But the misnomer out there about psychologists and psychology and psychiatry is, oh, in order to talk, it must be bad.
Yeah.
No. And people have a fear of it because they think, oh, I'm going in to talk about, I have a problem. No, it's actually talking about, if we've got a session or two that we're talking about good stuff, something's working.
And a great skill set is being able to put the baggage down. And if you can find your way to do that in a therapy session every week or every 2 weeks, you build that skill set.
Exactly.
Like for an hour, I can put everything down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. Exactly. You got it.
Yeah.
So anyway, that is my series on trauma and trauma bonding in relationships across the board, whether it's friendships, family relationships, or regular romantic relationships. Last week's show was on what it is and so on. And this week was all on what it is and how to heal it and what's going to happen when you're going through it and how long it takes. And so if you want to put them together, you can, but and there's plenty of good resources out there too. So if anyone wants to do a reach out, I can give you good resources on that if people are looking. But you can do a good Google search on good books out there on trauma bonds and how to break them. They're out there as well.
I'm always looking for people to figure out their part in these situations. Yeah. But the takeaway today was figure out that it's not your partner's partner, the person who's creating the chaos.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. And because people who are in this situation tend to take it all on themselves.
Exactly.
They don't lay any blame. Well, they're going through a hard time, or
or
I'm not doing what they need,
or that's just who they are, and I can't change them, and so I have to fix myself, right? Yeah. So well, essentially, you have to just take care of you because they're not going to take care of you, and unless they decide that eventually that they are, they're not. So, and that was a good wrap up. Yeah, excellent. All right, so we will be back now into October and keep going on our movement forward and growth and learning and change. And everybody, thank you for joining me today, and I will see you next week.